Welcome to everyone, and can I give you a very warm welcome to London. We have foreign ministers here from more than 40 countries, from America to Asia, from Europe to Africa, from the United Nations to the Arab world. And we're all here united in one purpose, and that is to help the Libyan people in their hour of need. Today, I believe, should be about a new beginning for Libya, a future in which the people of Libya can determine their own destiny, free from violence and free from oppression. But the reason for being here today is that the Libyan people cannot reach that future on their own. They require, I believe, three things from us. First, we must reaffirm our commitment to the UN Security Council resolutions 1970 and 1973, and we should reaffirm the broad alliance that has been put in place to implement them. Second, we must ensure the fast delivery of humanitarian aid where it is needed, including to the newly liberated towns in Libya. And third, we must help the Libyan people plan for their future after the conflict is over. These are the three goals, I believe, of this conference, and I'd like to say a little about each in turn. First, UN Security Council Resolution 1973. It was just 12 days ago, following an appeal by the Arab League, that the United Nations passed the historic resolution to protect the people of Libya from the murderous brutality of Colonel Gaddafi. At the meeting Nicolas Sarkozy hosted in Paris, we made the right choice. That was to draw a line in the desert sand to halt the murderous advance of Gaddafi's forces. And I think we should be in no doubt that that action did save the city of Benghazi, it averted a massacre, and it has at least given freedom a chance in Libya. But I think we should be in no doubt about something else as well. And that is, as we sit here today, and as I speak, people in Misrata continue to suffer murderous attacks from the regime. I have had reports this morning that the city is under attack from both land and from the sea. Gaddafi is using snipers to shoot people down and let them bleed to death in the street. He's cut off food, water, and electricity to starve people into submission. And he is harassing humanitarian ships that are trying to get into the port to do what they can to relieve their suffering. He continues to be in flagrant breach of the UN Security Council resolution. That is why there's been such widespread support among the Libyan people and in the wider Arab world for the action that we're taking. It has saved lives, and it is saving lives. As one Misrata resident put it, these strikes give us hope. Today, we must be clear and unequivocal. We will not take that hope away. We will continue to implement the UN resolution for as long as is necessary to protect the Libyan people from danger. Second, humanitarian aid. Just as it's essential that the international community works together to stop the slaughter, it is vital that we get aid in to save lives, and this has to happen now. Even in Misrata, humanitarian agencies have managed to get some supplies in. In Benghazi, the ICRC, Islamic Relief, and the International Medical Corps are back in and are working hard. In Ajabir, thousands of people have fled, but the hospital is reported to be functioning, though it urgently needs more nursing and more supplies. So supplies are getting in, but we need to redouble our efforts. The whole international community needs to work together, and the UN has an absolutely critical role in ensuring that aid gets through, especially in the newly liberated towns. When the fighting is over, we will need to put right the damage that Gaddafi has inflicted, repairing the hospitals that have been ruined by shells, rebuilding the homes demolished by his tanks, and restoring the mosques and minarets that have been smashed by his barbarity. It is never too early to start planning coordinated action to support peace in Libya over the longer term. And again, it is surely the UN, working with regional organizations and the rest of the international community, that should lead this work. Repairing physical infrastructure, ensuring basic services, and helping Libyans restore functioning government at every level. Third, we must help the people of Libya plan now for the political future that they want to build. Yes, our military action can protect people from attack, and yes, our humanitarian action can help people recover, but neither are sufficient to provide a greater path to freedom. Ultimately, the solution must be a political one, and it must be for the Libyan people themselves to determine their destiny. That means reinforcing the UN sanctions to exert the greatest possible pressure on Gaddafi and his regime. And it requires bringing together the widest possible coalition of political leaders, including civil society, local leaders, and most importantly, the Interim Transitional National Council, so that the Libyan people can speak with one voice. I propose that today's conference should agree to set up a contact group which will put political effort on a sustained basis into supporting the Libyan people. We should be clear about the scale of the challenge. It will mean looking afresh at our whole engagement with Libya and the wider region, from our development programs to our cultural exchanges to our trade arrangements. All of these things must be redoubled, and we must support the building blocks of a democratic society. Freedom of expression, the right to free and fair elections, the right to peaceful protest, respect for human rights and the rule of law. These aren't values that belong to any one nation. They are universal. They are embedded in the vision of a democratic Libya set out by the Interim Transitional National Council today, and we should warmly welcome this commitment. As this broad range of countries gathers here today in London, there are people suffering terribly under Gaddafi's rule. Our message to them is this: there are better days ahead for Libya. Just as we continue to help protect the Libyan people from the brutality of this regime, so we will support and stand by them as they seek to take control of their own destiny. Their courage and their determination should be rewarded. A new beginning for Libya is within their grasp, and we must help them to seize it. Thank you. I'd now like to ask Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to speak, and after that, His Excellency the Prime Minister of Qatar and Secretary of State Clinton.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, and I thank the Government of the United Kingdom for organizing this important meeting, and I highly commend and appreciate your leadership. Security Council Resolution 1970 and 1973 are an unequivocal statement of our determination to force the government of Libya to stop its campaign of violence against its own citizens. The fact that the international community acted decisively and swiftly saved thousands of lives. And I'm very much encouraged that only after 10 days of summit meeting in Paris, we are gathering in a much broader participation. And I'm very much moved by this decisive commitment of international community. When the airstrikes began, government forces were poised to enter Benghazi. A bloodbath appeared to be inevitable. I have called repeatedly, but for now, we have prevented the humanitarian catastrophe. Yet we also know air operations alone will not resolve the crisis, nor will it bring about a political solution that meets the aspiration of the Libyan people. I therefore welcome the consultations with international partners that recently took place in Addis Ababa under the leadership of African Union. For our part, the United Nations, from the beginning, has undertaken strong diplomatic efforts to end the crisis in Libya. I and my special envoy, who is here with us, Mr. Abdel Al-Khatib, have remained in close contact with all parties, including the Libyan authorities and opposition. I have called repeatedly for an immediate ceasefire and unrestricted humanitarian access to all areas of the country. My special envoy will return to Libya shortly, again to meet both with the leaders of the government and opposition. He will also engage closely with international stakeholders, including the League of Arab States, African Union, and OIC, and the European Union. His aim is to keep direct channels of communication with all sides on the conflict and to use these contacts to help resolve the conflict and to bring about the settlement. That, of course, with the will of the Libyan people. In tandem with the Special Envoy's activities, a humanitarian coordinator also carried out the mission in Tripoli. The humanitarian coordinator's efforts are ongoing, and preparations are underway for an interagency humanitarian needs assessment in the east of Libya. Excellencies, it is important also to recall the Security Council Resolution 1973 demands that the Libyan authorities comply fully with their obligation under international humanitarian and human rights law. As you well know, we continue to receive deeply disturbing reports about the lack of protection of civilians, including migrant workers, as well as abuses of human rights by the parties to the conflict. In view of the current military operations, humanitarian aid should be delivered by humanitarian organizations in order to ensure that aid delivery is carried out according to humanitarian principles. According to the latest figures from International Organization of Migration and the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, around 380,000 people have left Libya since the start of the unrest, and some 13,000 people remain stranded at the borders with Egypt and Tunisia. We are mobilizing all possible efforts using these international organizations, and I also visited Egypt and Tunisia last week. So far, $160 million regional flash appeal for the Libyan crisis is 67% funded. I hope that the countries participating in this meeting will generously contribute to this flash appeal. Assessment by World Food Programme in eastern Libya report that food supplies are gradually being consumed but not replenished. A drawn-out conflict will increase, certainly, food insecurity and therefore the number of those needing assistance. Excellencies, our priority remains what it has been since military operations began: to save civilian lives and end the hostilities. Any ceasefire must be verifiable and will require coordinated monitoring. We need unrestricted humanitarian access, which in turn requires an international aid presence. It is critical that the international community remain united. Fast-moving developments on the ground requires to look ahead. Soon, Libya's people will have to re-engage with each other. Our long-term interest is to help them do so, focusing on the establishment of transitional arrangements that would meet the democratic aspirations of the Libyan people. The dramatic changes underway in Libya and elsewhere in North Africa require a coordinated, effective response from the international community. In that regard, I'd like to support what Prime Minister David Cameron has suggested to establish a contact group. And I'd like to see that the very close coordination among United Nations, League of Arab States, African Union, OIC, and European Union, this is a contact group, should have a very close coordination. Any fragmented approach, I know that everybody is very much anxious and passionate to help Libyan people and to address this crisis, but we need to have a very close coordination, and I'm going to lead this coordination if you agree. We know that any stable democracy must be grounded in political, economic, and social development. This will require strategy based on an integrated framework and firm commitments from us all. We will have to address such issues as economic reforms and job creation, justice and reconciliation, human rights, capacity and institution building, political dialogue, electoral assistance, and security sector reform. These are the issues the people in the region desperately need. I'm sure that the Libyan people will need much, much more because they are not organized. The government, the regime, they have not encouraged the civil society. It has just been one-man rule And therefore, we need to be very much, I think, strategic in helping them to have a very smooth transition toward the rule of law and fuller democracy. The decades-long repression of political parties, civil society, organizations, and media also pose substantial challenges. Excellencies, distinguished foreign ministers and heads of international organizations, the transition to a democratic government and society will take time and the support of us all. The United Nations is ready and willing to assist the people of Libya in this transition, and we are eager to help and to work very closely with you. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. I'd now like to ask the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of the State of Qatar to speak to us.
Thank you, Mr. David. You can use the headphone because I will speak. With the name of Allah, Mr. David Cameron, the Prime Minister, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I just would like to thank the government of the UK for arranging for that meeting in order to discuss the new issues which happened after the Paris meeting and after the meeting which took place in the United Nations under Resolution 1973. The Arab League has requested, as you wanted, to enforce a no-fly zone on Libya to protect civilians. And the African Union has also asked to stop the violence, and the Security Council took control of that after it accredited the first resolution, 1970, and then 1973, which permitted the Arab League and the members to take all actions required to protect civilians. And the resolution also has asked for a ceasefire and stop all assaults on the civilians and to allow humanitarian aid to reach needy people. That delegation from the United Nations is a commitment for all member countries, and that delegation was very important to stop the massacre for very civilians Gaddafi was about to commit. Gaddafi was gonna commit atrocities against civilians. And we took that route, the legal route, according to the United Nations Charter in the Security Council, to have that delegation. That's a legitimate action to stop killing of people. There is no doubt that the actions, the military actions which been taken according to that delegation has stopped to a great extent the power of Gaddafi and protected the civilians from the violence which Gaddafi regime was about to commit. That was actually important to make the Libyan people feel like that they are about to get rid of that murderous regime, and they will be able to achieve a better future, and they will have freedom with the help of the international community. The aim is very important, and it's part of the power delegated by the international community. We, Qatar, as a country, we have provided humanitarian aid to the Libyan people and took part in enforcing the no-fly zone, and at the same time we moved many people who were not able to go back to their countries because of the violence. And lately we have acknowledged the Interim Council as the only representative of the Libyan, because we are convinced that's the only representative of the Libyan people, legitimate representative. And the people inside that council from different Libyan areas or regions, we would like Gaddafi, we hope he give up power to stop the killing and the murders of people. We would like Gaddafi to listen to the international community, and we hope our cooperation will succeed.
To speak to us.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, and thanks to you and your government for the critical leadership effort you have demonstrated in our common effort. Thanks to France, which has been at the forefront of this mission, including by hosting many of us last week in Paris. And really thanks to everyone around this table. We have prevented a potential massacre, established a no-fly zone, stopped an advancing army, added more partners to this coalition, and transferred command of the military effort to NATO. That's not bad for a week of work at a time of great intense international concern. The United States has been proud to stand with our NATO, Arab, and European partners. We've been responding to the appeals of the Libyan people and to the Arab League's call for urgent action. And we have joined with countries around the world, including all 3 countries representing Africa on the United Nations Security Council, to pass 2 strong resolutions. So this has been truly an international effort and a reflection of our shared concern for the safety of civilians and our support for the legitimate aspirations of the Libyan people. Well, we meet now in London at a turning point. NATO has taken command of enforcing the arms embargo and the no-fly zone. On Sunday, it agreed to take on the additional responsibility of protecting civilians. Last night, President Obama expressed his full confidence that this coalition will keep the pressure on Gaddafi's remaining forces. I second that confidence. This coalition military action will continue until Gaddafi fully complies with the terms of 1973, ceases his attacks on civilians, pulls his troops back from places they have forcibly entered, and allows key services and humanitarian assistance to reach all Libyans. But beyond our military efforts, all of us are called to continue to work together along 3 tracks. First, delivering desperately needed humanitarian assistance. Second, pressuring and isolating the Gaddafi regime through robust sanctions and other measures. Third, supporting efforts by Libyans to achieve their aspirations through political change. On the humanitarian front, under the leadership of the United Nations, we will work with NATO, the EU, other international organizations, and regional partners to deliver assistance. The coalition military campaign has made it possible for more help to get through. For example, a convoy organized by the World Food Program was able to reach Benghazi this weekend with 18 tons of supplies, including food and blankets. But a great deal more aid is needed, and we have to work quickly and cooperatively to assess and respond. Beyond the humanitarian crisis, we know long-term progress in Libya will not be accomplished through military means. All of us have to continue the pressure on and deepen the isolation of the Gaddafi regime. This includes a unified front of political and diplomatic pressure that makes clear to Gaddafi he must go, that sends a strong message of accountability, and that sharpens the choice for those around him. It also includes financial pressure through the vigorous enforcement of sanctions authorized under Security Council resolutions 1970 and 1973. As President Obama said last night, while our military mission is focused on saving lives, we must continue to pursue the broader goal of a Libya that belongs not to a dictator, but to the Libyan people. Now, we cannot and must not attempt to impose our will on the people of Libya, but we can and must stand with them as they determine their own destiny. And we have to speak with one voice in support of a transition that leads to that time. We agree with the Arab League that Gaddafi has lost the legitimacy to lead. We agree with the African Union on the need for a democratic transition process. And we support UN Special Envoy Khatib's planned travel to Libya following this conference to assess conditions and report to the international community. We believe that Libya's transition should come through a broadly inclusive process that reflects the will and protects the rights of the Libyan people. The Transitional National Council and a broad cross-section of Libya's civil society and other stakeholders have critical contributions to make. Earlier today, I had the opportunity to meet with senior representatives of the Council and to talk about the path forward. The UN, the African Union, the Arab League, the OIC, and the EU all, all have important roles to play. And through this, the United States will join the international community in our commitment to the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and national unity of Libya. This is a time of great change for Libya, for its neighbors across the region and around the world. Under different governments, under different circumstances, people are expressing the same basic aspirations: a voice in their government, an end to corruption, freedom from violence and fear, the chance to live in dignity, and to make the most of their God-given talents. Now, we know these goals are not easily achieved, but they are, without question, worth working for together. And I'm very proud that this coalition has come to this place at this time to try to pursue those goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Secretary Clinton.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming along. I'll just introduce myself and my colleague. My name is Juma El Gamati. I'm from Libya, but I live in the UK. I'm currently the coordinator between the Interim National Council in Libya and Britain. My colleague is Mr. Mahmoud Shammam. He's a journalist. He's also currently now in charge of all the media affairs with regard to the Interim National Council. He lives in Washington, and he moves between Washington and Doha in Qatar. So let me just start by saying that this document, A Vision of a Democratic Libya, explains briefly the core messages and the core vision of Libya of the future. Libya post-Colonel Gaddafi. The new Libya, hopefully, very soon. Obviously, one of the key motivations of why the Libyan people have come out en masse to demonstrate peacefully on the 17th of February, triggered by a demonstration in Benghazi, is because Libya and the Libyan people have been suffering for 42 years under sheer tyranny and oppression and dictatorship. So that means the real aspirations of the Libyan people are to be free, to live under a constitutional, democratic system where there is rule of law, all essential freedoms are guaranteed, and people can fulfill their potential and realize their aspirations. So that is the hope, that is the vision. What we have tried to articulate in this document is just the vision of Libya once Gaddafi is out of power. Now, the role of the Interim National Council is to facilitate that process through a transition period until we reach a state, a permanent state, where there is a constitution crafted by the Libyan people. The constitution will highlight the framework of a new democratic civil government in Libya. Obviously, we are very determined. We hear from a lot of Libyans, from intellectuals and others, that we had enough of tyranny. We have lost a golden chance over the last 42 years to develop our country, to utilize the huge resources Libya had, to have proper development, proper prosperity, and real freedoms. But now, once hopefully Gaddafi is out, this chance will be possible again, and the Libyan people are determined to work to achieve it. So we can perhaps take any questions around this. But let me just add to our activities today as a delegation. We have been meeting with various foreign ministers. Dr. Mahmoud Jibril and my colleague here, Mr. Mahmoud Shammam, and myself met with Secretary William Hague in the morning, and then we met with Secretary Hillary Clinton. We also met with the foreign minister, the German foreign minister, and we met with Monsieur Alain Juppé, the French foreign minister. And there might be other meetings as well going on or might take place later on. The meetings have been very constructive. My colleague Mahmoud may say a few things about that.
It was very good meetings, very warm meetings. We appreciate the positions and the stands of all of the countries represented by those foreign affairs ministers, and we express our concerns. We still have a lot of things to be concerned about, and we got some good answers and some questions. Some other questions needed to be further discussion, and I think generally, we will wait and see what's going to happen today in the meeting. There is a follow-up meeting after that meeting, and we are very happy and satisfied with the results that we got today. We have some other meetings after this press conference, and we will proceed, and I will take any question about specific issues.